All right, so we are here to talk about introduction to behavior learning targets. And so the very first one is I can explain the purpose of behavior. And anything that organisms are going to spend energy doing is going to be because of two things: to help the organism survive and to help the organism reproduce. Okay, and or. So all of our behaviors are for those two reasons: survival and reproduction. I can explain the role of a stimulus in behavior. Well, stimulus is simply the thing that causes a behavior. So if your behavior is to run, then there is something that caused you to run, right? Something's chasing you, you heard a scary sound, somebody told you to run, you're in a race and you heard the shotgun go off or whatever it's called to start the race, and you start running. If you are sweating, the stimulus would be that you are getting too hot and your body's trying to maintain homeostasis so that you can survive. So anytime there is a behavior, there is a stimulus that triggers that behavior or causes that behavior. So that's what a stimulus is. I can discuss the role of genetics in the environment and behavior. So some behaviors are genetic. We call those innate behaviors, and I think we'll talk about those again in more detail in a second. But innate behaviors are those that you are born knowing how to do. Mammals, we're born knowing how to grasp. So if you grab an infant's hand, or stick your finger there, they'll grasp around it. If you rub the top of their mouth, like inside, they will start to suck. Birds, a lot of them imprint. So there's a sensitive time period within hatching that whatever they see, they imprint upon, and they think that's their mother and they follow it. So there are some behaviors that are innate. Bird songs are innate. They're genetic. Okay, you're born knowing how to do it, and it's passed down through the genes. Then there are those behaviors that are learned. Learned behaviors, we say they're environmental because they're not passed down in the genes. They're still passed down, but they're passed down because the parents are teaching the children. So it's not a genetic inheritance, it's an educational experience, I guess you would say. I'm not even looking at this PowerPoint to see if there's anything that would help y'all here. Okay. Yep, so increase our chance of survival. Tells you what a stimulus is. All right, so genetic or environmental. And again, genetics is innate, environmental is learned. So we know that some behaviors are both. Other behaviors are just innate, and other behaviors are just learned. So it just depends. I can give an example of an organism responding to their environment. Oh my word, there's like a million. A bird sees another bird of the same species and sings a mating song. Or a lion sees a cheetah. A lion sees like an antelope, or a cheetah sees an antelope, and they go running after it because that's food. And so the antelope takes off running, and the lion or cheetah or whatever runs after them. You sweat when you're too hot. You shiver when you're too cold. There are literally thousands of behaviors I could list, and we're not going to do that because we don't have time. But predator warnings would be another one. So one member of the population sees a predator and hollers to the others, "Hey, there's a predator," and so they all can respond. So all of those are different types, and some of them are auditory. So some of them are communication that's verbal sounds. Some of it is tactile. You saw that with the elephants if you did the animals that communicate, click and learn. Some of it is visual. So like if you're talking in class and I go, or if you're at church and your mom goes, then you're in trouble, right? Get that face, you're in trouble. So that would be an example of a nonverbal. I can define kinesis. All right, so kinesis is, let me find my slide because I feel like looking at it makes it make more sense. Kinesis is the random response with movement to a stimulus. So here's the stimulus, and here's the stimulus. We'll say it's the sunshine. And because the best example of this is like a roly-poly, or what we call a sow bug. And when they feel sun on their backs, they start moving because what they know two things about sun. They can dehydrate, predators can see them. So they know that they're really vulnerable when they feel sunshine. So they don't necessarily move towards the shade because they don't really know where the shade is, but they start moving because they know if I stay here, I stay vulnerable. If I move, there's a chance I'll get to somewhere safe. And so what they do is they just start moving randomly. And then when they get to some point where there is no more sun, where they don't feel the sun on their backs anymore, then they stop moving because they know they're under something. And so it's random movement. It's not towards or away from anything. It's just, I know I have to move because staying where I am is dangerous. So I'm just going to move and hope that I get somewhere safer. And they may not. They may move for 3 hours and still be in the sun and dehydrate and die. I mean, it's not always going to win, but they know by staying where they are, they're going to lose. Versus taxis. Taxis is intentional movement. Taxis is towards something or away from something. I smell brownies baking, I walk towards the kitchen, right? I smell, I don't know, roadkill. When I'm out for a walk, I'm going to walk the other way because I don't want to get close to that and see that and smell that. So taxis is going to be movement towards or away. And it can be, if it's positive, it's towards, and if it's negative taxis, it's away. And so we can put together these pieces of words to tell kind of what's happening. So like positive phototaxis would be a plant that turns towards the sun. So if the sun's over here, the plant leans towards the sun. Negative phototaxis would be if for some reason, I guess like the sow bug, well, that's not taxis though, but some other organism that's moving away from the sun, intentionally moving towards the shade. Chemotaxis, we do this with smell. Geotaxis with gravity. Okay. And then in this example, there's rheotaxis, which is with the current, but those are just some examples. And again, they can all be positive or negative. I can explain the advantage gained by plants doing phototropism. So phototropism is simply where plants bend towards the light, like this little guy down here. And the benefit of that is for plants, sunlight is food. And so if they bend towards the light, they're going to get more food, they're going to get more energy. And that's one of the things we have to do to stay alive. So we have to obtain and use energy. And so they're able to obtain more energy by bending towards that sunlight. That's a behavior that benefits their survival. I can describe the different ways plants can respond to night length with photoperiodism. So photoperiodism is not like phototropism. It's not a movement towards or away from the light. It is simply a response of flowering. So the behavior is to flower, but it is in response to the length of the night. So if it's a short day plant, okay, short days mean long nights, okay? So if it's a short day plant, it needs really long nights. And there's some critical length. Different plants have different ones, different species. So let's say the critical length is 10 hours. As long as the night is longer than 10 hours, the plant will flower, okay? Because it knows that that's the environment it needs to be in to be successful with its babies, because that's what flowering is really doing, is reproduction. If it is a long day plant, long day, short night, then it needs a shorter night. And so if that critical length was 10 hours, if it's less than that, if it's an 8-hour night or a 9-hour night, then the plant is going to flower. If it's longer than that, then it won't. And these would be like your summer plants, because what they know is I need to bloom and flower when it's warm. My babies are going to have a better survival chance if it's warm. And so that's what we see with these long day plants. They tend to bloom and flower in the spring and summer when the days are getting longer. And their body's just constantly reading light. They've got these photoreceptors that pick up light, and that's how they kind of know when they're stimulated for a certain amount of time, they send out different hormones to flower or not flower. Okay, I can explain the benefit of circadian and circannual rhythms. Circadian rhythms are things that we know we're going to need to do every day. And so instead of starting from scratch every day, we set these rhythms up. We have these cycles of hormones that go in our body, and our body knows, okay, it's getting close to nighttime. Let's start rising that melatonin. Let's start getting sleepy, because your body doesn't want to have to say, okay, you know what? It's about time for bed. Let me make some melatonin, right? It wants to have already started that process. And so by having these rhythms, these daily cycles in your body, so that your body goes ahead and starts to do things as those daily parts, it's not really parts of the day, are going by, then your body is kind of getting a jump on things. It's more efficient to have these rhythms in place, so that you kind of stay on this cycle of knowing, okay, naturally my body's going to go ahead and start making this hormone because it's going to be about time for it, instead of having to trigger that response every single time with some external cue. And the same thing with circannual. Circannual rhythms are the same thing, but they're annual instead of daily. I can give an example of organisms exchanging information with one another. Okay, I look at you and I go, "What, you kidding me?" Or I'm giving you information. A antelope sees a lion. It's getting information. That's a predator. He wants to eat me. I better run. So it's not always going to be verbal. Sometimes it's visual. Sometimes it's scent. A lot of animals will mark their areas with, mark their territories. And so bears and cats and things will rub, or they'll either urinate on or spread feces on or rub a scent gland against these different skunks, will spray their skunk stuff on their trees and stuff around their area. And that keeps other bears or cats or skunks or whatever out of the way. It says this area is already taken. So that's one example. Fight or flight's another. So there's a threat that's perceived. The organism's body decides to fight or flee. It's not a conscious decision. Your body makes that decision for you. And but there is a communication there between two organisms. Then predator warnings, we already mentioned that one. One organism is going to yell to the others, hey, there's danger. And the rest of them are going to say, okay, I'm going to hide. And then, plant responses to herbivory. Some plants can actually release chemicals that are going to tell the rest of the plant that it's being attacked. And so when something is grazing on it, when a sheep or a cow or something is grazing on it, then they will know that to start producing other chemicals like garlic or there's different one. There's one, I think it's a clover maybe, that makes a chemical that makes sheep sterile temporarily. And so it signals them to start producing all that kind of stuff. All right. There's a lot of other examples. Anytime animals communicate, they're exchanging information with one another. I can differentiate between proximate and ultimate explanations for behaviors. So proximate is, why is the body doing it? How is the body doing it? So it is releasing this hormone. It is doing some other, I don't have it in my PowerPoint, I guess, but it's releasing this hormone that's causing this signaling cascade that's getting this response, or different things like that. It's how the body is actually engaging in that behavior, receiving that stimulus and transferring that to the actual movement of muscles or sweating or whatever it is that the behavior is. Ultimate is tying it back to the evolutionary history of the organism. Why is this particular behavior beneficial in a survival and reproductive type scenario? How does it help the organism survive? How does it help it reproduce? Why would natural selection choose this behavior or choose against this behavior? That's the ultimate. So proximate is more the anatomy and physiology behind the behavior, whereas ultimate is more the evolution of the behavior, more the theoretical. I think the proximate, for me at least, is more of the concrete. This is how the behavior happens. This is what the body's doing. Ultimate is more, this is why and how it helps the organism. All right. We also had, I can predict data needed to support a hypothesis. I'm not really going to go over that one, but that was something that you did in the deadly passion case study. You had to predict which data would support. They gave you the hypothesis of why the female did this behavior, why the male did this behavior. And then you had to predict which data would support that hypothesis. We do this kind of throughout the year. So I'm not going to really give you another example of that. But if you didn't do well on that case study and you have questions about it, we can talk that through. And then the last one, I can explain the role of clock genes in maintaining the circadian rhythm. That was from the Circadian Rhythm website or WebQuest. And those clock genes basically signal for the production of different hormones that are going to keep that rhythm going. So like I said, there's hormones that are released that tell the body, okay, now it's time to start making melatonin to bring the body down, the heart rate down, the breathing down, the metabolism, all that. So all those clock genes are just controlling that whole process of when certain things happen. And so they're the ones that actually set those rhythms, because they tell this hormone needs to peak at noon, and this hormone needs to peak at 4, and this hormone needs to peak at 8 p.m. or whatever. This hormone needs to peak at 6 a.m. to help the body wake up or whatever. So that's what those clock genes are doing, is they're setting up those rhythms to keep that circadian rhythm going. And that's it. So if you have any questions about any of these learning targets, let me know. I'm just glancing over to make sure I didn't miss one. And I hope that helped.